Don't we all love summer vacation, relaxing, laying out by the pool, barbecues, hitting the beach, doing, well, nothing? Well, how about a summer vacation from your house payments? With SaveWithConrad.com, you can do just that. Reduce your monthly payments by making the equity you built up in your home work for you. You can roll together those high interest rate credit cards into one lower monthly payment and perhaps access some of that newfound equity to turn your house into your dream home with no money out of pocket. And how about this? You get to skip your next two house payments. That's right. You won't have to make your June or your July house payment. You're done until August 1st. Go right now to SaveWithConrad.com. Let my team run the numbers for you for free. There's no obligation, and if we can't help you save some cash, we won't waste your time. And did I mention we're offering a 3-year guarantee right now? That's right. That means if at any point interest rates improve over the next 3 years, you get a free refi. That's right. No new lender fees from us. So you get to save money now without wasting money later when the rates improve on a whole second set of closing costs. Why not go to SaveWithConrad.com and get a guarantee? Save money now and save money later with your friend in the mortgage business. That's me, Conrad Thompson at SaveWithConrad.com. Shoot me an email at Conrad@SaveWithConrad.com. Give us a call at 888-425-0105. Or get yourself a quick quote, even talk to a live person right now at SaveWithConrad.com. NMLS number 2129, equal housing lender. Let's take a summer vacation from house payments at SaveWithConrad.com. How about it? Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Grilling JR with the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. Jim, how are you, man?
I'm good. I just got back off the road. I'm feeling pretty good. Nice. Always good to get home safe and sound.
Absolutely.
And we're covering some miles, this time because our locations on taping AEW we're moving west. So a lot of we got like 3 weeks in Texas, I think.
Wow.
Something like that. Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm going to try to get to Oklahoma during that time period. I've been going to my wound care specialist every Tuesday morning, which I'm beginning to really dread because it's a painful freaking ordeal. He takes a scalpel, goes into that wound, and starts scraping dead material. And to say it didn't hurt is wrong. It's a lie. It does hurt, but we're cleaning it out and keeping it rolling and healing. So I guess at the end of the day, that's the way it is. And JR just can't be a little sissy and worry about having a little pain. I've been in a little pain since last November, a year now. It's been a year since I got diagnosed.
Wow.
And it was this time last year that I started 22 radiation treatments. So it's been a very interesting year, to say the least. And but progress is being made. That's all that matters.
Roll Tide on that, man.
Yes,
I'm so thankful and happy that that's getting further and further behind you with every passing day, and we're just glad to have you. You know, obviously that AEW schedule is picking up, and of course, folks can see and hear you on Wednesday and Fridays. And of course, this past Wednesday we saw an interesting piece of business that got everybody in wrestling talking a little bit about, hey, what does this mean? What's next for Mr. William Regal?
Yeah.
Of course, as you and I are recording, the internet is abuzz and everybody's got their theories. And man, what an on-camera performer he has been for AEW. And it's my understanding that he would try to work out with some of the guys beforehand. And just a beloved figure in wrestling, universally respected. I don't think we can say enough nice things about Mr. Regal.
No, I don't think we can either, Conrad. He's a valuable asset to AEW or wherever he may be, or in any company. So it's been a blessing to have him around because he was one of my guys I really worked hard to salvage a career for back in the day. And so he's been a very valuable resource. You know, you can't replace guys with that kind of experience. And in Regal's case, also the patience to help these young guys, because he was in the ring every day, when we go at TV, and just always had time for the talent and young green guys. And I told some of them the other day, I said, hope you guys are paying attention to him. I mentioned the MJF. I said, the more you can set under that learning tree of William Regal and talk about the psychology of being a wrestling villain, you should, because
Yes.
he's got great psychology and again, a very valuable asset to wherever he may be. I don't know what the future holds for him, but I mean, he's he's one of those guys that you can't replace easy,
Right.
or at all. I don't know if you can replace him at all, quite frankly. So he's been an amazing boost for us, and we'll see how he's. I think as we speak, he might be in England. So, but he's been a great friend and a loyal guy, honest, hardworking, and like I said, the patience to work with some of these young cats is really amazing. It's tough. So he's been talked about a lot here, and so we'll see where it goes storyline wise as we move forward. Because I don't have a clue. I like to not know, Conrad. You know that. I just
Yeah.
just what's happening, and so it should be fine. He'll be good. He's a hell of a guy, and has been a very valuable team member of AEW since he arrived.
Well, I'm excited that we're going to get to talk about some of these young cats, as you called it, you phrased it, because today's topic is about developmental.
Right.
Because when you think about WWE and their developmental program, a lot of that would fall on your desk as well. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's just jump into it. Once upon a time, the WWF had essentially used territories to develop talent. Maybe they didn't know they were doing that. But you see, territories were far and wide. And when Vince went national, boy, he just started to pluck off the best of the best. And eventually, Vince would even convince promoters to send in tapes of their shows for him to air on USA. And, well, he wound up signing away some of the very best talent. And eventually, as those territories start to die down, maybe Vince realizes, hey, maybe that wasn't all that bad, because it feels like the first developmental home for the WWE was the USWA in Memphis. Of course, we saw a ton of talent come through there, including a guy who we know these days as The Rock.
Right.
What was it about Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett and the USWA as a whole that made you feel confident that, or maybe Vince felt confident that, hey, this can be it. This can be what developmental could be for WWE?
I think their track record, they produce a lot of talent successfully. And so their track record to me was what put them with the head of the class, and the fact that they were running a lot of shows. The key thing I've always said is the guys have got to work with talents that were better than them, and that could help them improve and get a lot of ring time.
Right.
So that's what we got out of that scenario. So, and it worked for us. It worked for us. It was a good kickoff to what was drastically needed. Vince and I used to have conversations, and I don't mean this in a negative way with regarding the British Bulldog, but it was always like, I would say, well, Vince, we can't continue to repackage the Bulldog.
Right.
We're wearing it all that out. What's next for him? And that was just using him as an example, not the example. But you know what I'm saying? We had a lot of guys like that were looking for a reprieve or a restart,
a fresh coat of paint.
Yeah, fresh coat of paint.
Yeah,
and so it was the right time, the right thing to do, and I think that the developmental program, which has led to NXT now,
right,
was the right thing to do, and probably one of my better things as a administrator to get that started and get people on board that we need to develop new talent, and this is one way we can do it where we have some control. So that was where that started. But the USWA had a great track record, and we believed in their system, and I like working with Lawler a lot because we're partners on the air and all that good stuff. But I knew that we'd get results out of it. It was good for them to have success as well because it was good for their brand. So consequently, I think we made the right move there on how we started the developmental program.
It really is remarkable to think about, that maybe we don't even consider what developmental might look like once upon a time for WWE because we've got some of the best wrestlers in the world. But it is one of those deals where you hear all the time in wrestling, the way you get better is you got to have reps, right? You got to
Oh
have
yeah,
bites of the apple. And so back in the old territory days, man, you were working 5, 6, 7 days a week and
right.
oftentimes in front of the same crowd every week. So you would have to try new things and get your ass out of your comfort zone. And then you'd have to do those localized promos and sell tickets. And when
Correct.
you're required to do that on a weekly and then daily basis, you can't help but get better. And you don't really want to have people come out on WWE TV and it be the first time they've held a microphone in front of a crowd. And
Oh,
well, let's just hope for the best, right?
we weren't. Yeah, exactly. We weren't going to have that. We weren't going to have any embarrassing situations. And the other thing you don't want to do is put talents in a position where they may not feel comfortable, where they may not think that they were in the right spot. Maybe their advancement was a little premature. We weren't going to have that if we keep from it. So it worked out, and it kept getting better. Conrad, that's the one thing about it. It kept getting better. And if you look at the guys that we signed, that we put in developmental, and where they ended up with Hall of Fame careers, with a lot of money in the bank, and all those things, and contributing to the success of the brand, it was very much needed, and we found our solution there. And because the guys that we produced in that system, no matter what they were based, where they were based, but in that system was very impressive.
No doubt about it. We saw a photo a moment ago of Flex Kavana. I mean, The Rock coming through is maybe one of the most glowing testimonials. But when you take a look at Memphis and you go way back, you would see even guys like Sting and the Ultimate Warrior. I mean, a lot of those guys, everybody, whether you were The Undertaker or Mick Foley or Steve Austin, everybody came through Memphis at some point. And it did feel like once Vince had sort of gobbled all of that up in the 80s, by the time the 90s rolled around, you are looking for some other opportunities. And since, Vince clearly had a good relationship with Jerry, maybe that made sense. Jerry Jarrett. And of course, Jerry Lawler's on the team.
Right.
So if this is their territory, that's kind of easy. And the other thing that you would try as well is ECW. And that almost becomes like a de facto developmental system where you have guys who are just going to go hone their craft a little bit. Maybe it's an Aldo Montoya. He's going to turn into Just Incredible. Maybe it's an Al Snow. He's going to go down there and find some head. There
Yeah.
were lots of opportunities for guys to sort of go back and forth. And I think maybe one of the first times we saw an ECW talent come to the WWE in a big way was Too Cold Scorpio when he became Flash Funk in November of 96. But I think we were always careful to not ever specifically refer to ECW as a developmental system.
Right.
What would be the difference between the way you were doing something in Memphis versus the way you might be doing it in ECW?
Well, the bottom line is that you did the same thing. You just got reps, and that was the key thing all along. Was these kids, young guys, whatever, in the ring, develop their confidence, develop their storytelling skills, and things of that nature. So the goal was always the same. I think, out of respect to ECW and uh, what their brand stood for in the eyes of a lot of people, uh, it just seemed like a very viable thing to do, Conrad. They had some good talents there, and
Yes.
they just needed cleaning up a little bit. They just need a little polish, as we say. So, but it was a good thing. I'm probably as proud of the developmental creation of that program as as I have been with anything I've done in talent relations. So I think it bailed our ass out of a lot of potential issues, get new talent. We talked about OVW is going to come up because they were a viable entity
Oh,
for
yeah.
for training. You had Al Snow there, as we've previously mentioned. He was a great uh, trainer, passionate about the bit. He and Danny Davis, Cornette, Rip Rogers, all were fabulous. And so we put together a real good staff.
Mhm.
And when people talk about Nick Saban's success, one of the things you can go back and look at is his track record with assistant coaches and where they are now. They're head coaches. They're making millions of dollars a year, and they all started. A lot of them started with Saban's staff. Easy for me to say this morning. So, nonetheless, it was fun. It was fun, and I had so much pride in what we accomplished. and giving guys the opportunity to get better and live their dream. And so I think that's kind of where the bottom line of this whole thing is. We're going to give you a chance to get really good at your skill set, and we're going to get you plenty of in-ring time. You're going to wrestle different people, and all of them are probably going to have much more experience than you. So consequently, it was a very magical formula that was so simplistic, it was crazy.
All right, guys, how about a little last minute heads up on Father's Day? Let me tell you what Dad really wants: comfort. And he's not going to tell you that, because you're probably going to ask him, hey, Dad, what do you want for Father's Day? Oh, nothing. Most of our dads act like they have everything and they don't want anything. But here's what they do want: comfortable jeans. They don't want to be showing plumber's crack. They don't want jeans that make you feel like they're going to rip when they bend over. They don't want to be walking around in stiff-ass cardboard. No, they want super soft clothes that are comfortable, that accommodate, well, saggy stuff and expanding bellies. They need the perfect jean. These things feel like you're wearing joggers. They're so stretchy, you can do whatever you want. Dad's going to be bending and shimmying and jiggling around, and he's not going to have any indecent exposure. And they cover waists for all sizes for Dad. How about 26 to 50-inch waists, 26 to 38-inch lengths, and they're perfect for anyone and everyone. There's no tailor required. And our dads are getting older. We don't need to limit their mobility. We need them moving and grooving. Maybe it'll make them a little less grumpy too. They've got everything you need. I'm a big believer in this product. They don't just make jeans either, by the way. They've got your super soft organic tees. These are like really nice cotton tees that are going to make your arms and chest pop and hide that belly a little bit. It's going to make Dad look like he's been in the gym, even if he hasn't. And you don't have to take my word for it. Go check out the reviews of these cats. The Perfect Jean has over 30,000 5-star reviews, and they've got over 5,000 different color and fit and sizing jean combinations. They can even hook you up with your den khaki combos and your colors for your shirts and even your shorts right now during this warmer weather. That's not a bad idea. The Perfect Jean also has free shipping, exchanges, and returns. So you got the peace of mind knowing that your order is completely risk-free. It's time to finally stop crushing your balls in uncomfortable jeans. Just go to theperfectjean.nyc. Our listeners will get 15% off your first order, plus free shipping, free returns, and free exchanges when you use the code JR15 at checkout. That's 15% off for new customers at theperfectjean.nyc with the promo code JR15. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Fuck your khakis. Get the Perfect Jean. When you've got a kid who comes in, has got some opportunity, let's say it's Brackus, right? Brackus is a bodybuilder. He looks good. Vince thinks there's money in this guy. Somehow he winds up in ECW. Is that a call that you would make to Paul and say, hey, man, we need to get this guy some reps. This guy needs some ring work.
Yeah.
Is that pretty much the process?
Yeah. We got this guy that Vince is high on. I was not high on Brackus.
Right.
I didn't think he had the intangibles because of his lack of product knowledge. He did look great. He had a very beautiful wife. She hung around the office a lot. But I didn't think he was at the top of my list. Now, look wise, if you're only going on looks, he could have been theoretically your number one guy, but he just didn't have the aptitude for this unique form of sports entertainment.
Well, it's I'm just curious about the business structure. I assume that you guys are going to pay him, and then it's up to him to just figure out the creative. Would a guy like Paul Heyman have to run any creative past you, or you don't care, just work on it?
No, we didn't. We used Paul's judgment, and why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Quite frankly. And that way it is a better fit within the individual promotion. Use the talent as you see fit. Just get them a lot of work, and especially focus on their fundamental skill set. So, but we had a lot of those guys that looked good, passed the eye test, and some had it, but more often than not, they didn't.
So let's talk about, just what that process entails. When you bring a guy in and you send him down, who's communicating something like that to Brackus? Will that also fall in your lap to say, all right, we need you to get some reps. Here's what we got in mind for you. Or does somebody else handle that?
I handled it, but I delegated a lot of it because we had a lot of talents spread around the country.
Right.
So you need some help. Tom Pritchard was very valuable and valuable, hell of a trainer. And then you had guys like, look, here's what we had. We had guys teaching, coaching uh, our young guys that have proven out to be great teachers.
Right.
Al Snow was a great in-ring instructor. Tom Pritchard was a great in-ring instructor. How we got all started with using Dory Jr. was a key element because of the way he trained people and his unique style, and the fact that a lot of guys that were getting trained by Dory Jr. were hero worshipers. They looked at Dory as one of the business's heroes, as they should, and so that's what we were. Dory was, we trained. We didn't have a facility. We used a warehouse there at Stanford, and I used to go there every day and watch Dory train, and how he worked out the talent. So, but we had some of the best instructors that you could acquire. We had the coaching staff of coaching staffs, and a lot of guys that we've already mentioned were viable elements in that whole process. But boy, what a good staff we had! Good Lord, we couldn't have done it without these guys teaching. Danny Davis, and as I said down in OVW, he and Cornette were great minds. Rip Rogers was a hell of a in-ring instructor. So we were very fortunate that we were able to work with a lot of guys that were just really good at what they do.
Well, help me understand the USWA with it closing at the end of 1997. Does that sort of force your hand on how we've got to just take things into our own hands here?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. It also put us back into a position of total control because we started, this was a better deal. Losing USWA didn't do us any favors, but I think the inevitable was it was going to close down. Their business was not good at that point in time. So, but we kind of flowed with it. We knew all along that somewhere down the road, we want to have our own facility. We want to train these guys and ladies to the very best of our ability. And that's kind of what our long-term goal was, which has now manifested itself into the Performance Center and the facility there in Orlando. So it was all starting to come together, but all because of a real good staff. And I had some really, really good people working on that and helped us a great deal. They took ownership, and I always will appreciate that. And I think the WWE should always appreciate it. And I'm sure that they do.
I love the idea of sort of starting from scratch and how this all comes together. And we know that, over at Trax, the warehouse near Titan Towers in Stanford, we know that Dory Funk is going to be one of the first guys who helps run what I guess is called the Funkin' Dojo. But
Yeah,
why Dory? Why does Dory get the nod here?
why not?
Well, I'm just saying, why him over someone else? Is it relationship? Is it?
Oh, well, I trusted him.
Right.
And he was fundamentally sound. My God, Conrad, he was one of the best workers in the history of wrestling. I think nobody's going to disagree with that. And so getting him there and with his experience, his maturity, and his fundamental soundness was a no-brainer to me. I mean, I thought we were lucky to have him. So Junior was just really terrific there. And, he butted heads with Tom a few times because they're coaches. They have their own way of communicating and their own priorities, their list of priorities, but it was never anything we didn't overcome. But, they'd butt heads occasionally, but that's part of it. So, but Junior was just a really key element in the very beginning because I knew that he was going to teach old school values and use old school techniques to get his job done. And he did.
Awesome. Well, I just love the idea of figuring out how this all came together. Of course, we know Dory Funk is going to be somebody who's pretty trustworthy. Normally a fellow who I believe at the time lived in Florida, but now he's going to venture up and brave that cold here in Stanford. And I assume Pat Patterson was hanging around. He had a role in all this. He loved this sort of thing. Did he not?
Oh yeah, he was great. Pat was a great asset because he was experienced. He loved being around the boys and all the talent. So yeah, Pat was invaluable because Pat could look at a talent, watch him work one match or watch him work 2 or 3 minutes, and tell you that kid's got something, or something along those lines. He was just really, really good at evaluating talents, and it got him out of the house, so to speak, got him out of his routine. Because for a long time, Pat and Bruce they were a pair, and they worked together as a pair, and so this gave Pat something new to do, and Bruce also helped a lot. So we wanted opinions from all kinds of people. And with the office politics as they were, the more you get people to buy into your concept, the more likely the concept was going to have more chances the concept was going to have to be successful. Because everybody's got this guy's not going to get over. He's too fat. He's too short. He's too tall. He's too whatever. And so getting those guys on board, I thought was going to be a very valuable thing as we move forward. I needed their support. I needed them to pitch in and help and evaluate some of these kids. And everybody involved did a good job.
No doubt. Let's put this into sports terms. You basically need training camps to teach these athletes what they should be doing. I mean, obviously they're athletes, but this is a new hold, as JR would like to say. This is a whole new skill set from even being an amateur wrestler. And when people get hurt, you need to be able to make sure they're having some sort of a supervised rehab, and they got to get ready to work back in the ring, work off some of that rust. So this makes a lot of sense. But I guess the question is, why do you think it took so long for this to happen? Like, Vince first goes national in the early 80s. Here we are in the late 90s before it becomes reality.
We didn't need a Conrad. We had a system. We had talents coming in.
Right.
Any remnants from the territory days were all viable candidates to get a job, because it's a new face that understood how to work, and it was really a no-brainer. And I think the reason the timing, as you alluded to, is the fact that simply the fact that hell, we were we're stocking our shelves until there was no more inventory, and we waited almost too long. But we made good choices on the talents that we signed and that we invested more time in. And again, getting guys on your side, whether it be a Bruce or a Pat, any of those cats, shoot, it was just a perfect storm in my view. The thing about it, I know Vince is going to ask. He's working a lot with Pat and Bruce on TV and things of that nature. So he's going to be around them a lot and interact with them a lot. So I wanted to make sure that Pat and Bruce are on board with these talents. And all the guys we signed it wasn't the fact that they're going to be great. We had hopes that many of them would be great, and some of them were. Some of them were still great. So but that's kind of where we were with that. It was hard you wanted everybody on the same page. If somebody's going to talk to Vince, I wanted to hear them say, "This kid's got something, Vince. They're going to like this guy." But Vince was not overly involved in it at that point in time. On a few talents that he personally liked, he liked the bodybuilder type. That's not new news. So he was all in, but on a limited basis.
The WWF starts its training camp, according to the Observer, in early '98. Dory Funk and Pat Patterson, of course, at the helm. Including in the camp are Mark Marrow, Aaron Drozdoff, Tiger Ali Singh, Randy Blackbeard, Ahmed Johnson, Mark Henry, Steve Blackman, Matt Bloom, Sean Stasiak, Sean Morley, Adam Copeland, Kurgan the Interrogator, and Taka Michinoku. They want Michinoku to do more mat wrestling so he doesn't have to do as many flying moves per match. And they also want him to work on his English and learn some interview skills. Reports are that Copeland, aka Edge, and Morley, aka Val Venus, have been the most impressive. Several of them are going to work a WWF house show on the 9th and 10th in New Hampshire. So, lots to unpack here, as I like to say. This is a who's who, and through various different parts of their career, we'll say. Mark Marrow had been injured. We're going to come back and be repackaged. We're no longer doing a wild man persona. We're no longer doing Johnny Be Bad. Darren Drozdov still trying to get his arms around it after being a pro football player. Tiger Ali Singh, man, we think maybe he can represent a new emerging market for us, but
That's all about India.
needs a little polish.
Yeah.
Ahmed Johnson has dropped a bunch of weight, like 35 pounds here, trying to get back into better shape. Mark Henry still trying to A, get into shape, and B, just hone those skills. Steve Blackman getting ready for prime time. Matt Bloom, we know, is eventually going to be an NXT trainer himself, but along the way, be A Train and a handful of other ideas. Sean Stasiak, a heritage performer, legacy performer. Sean Morley had certainly wrestled in Mexico, but he's got to learn the WWE style. Adam Copeland had been tearing it up in Canada and Michigan and the Indies, but now it's time for him to learn that WWE style. And Taka Michinoku, hey man, you got the high flying down. We need to maybe a more sustainable style and work on these interviews. So you got beginners, experts, everything in between here. And that probably creates a pretty fun environment for the talent because you've got not everybody's a greenhorn, not everybody's an expert. So different skill levels mean that everybody can learn a little bit at a time, right?
Yeah, something new. We want to teach those guys something new every week in the drills that Dory and Tom, ordered up. So yeah, it was. But I like the eclectic roster. Dory had so many trips to Japan that he was pretty proficient in speaking Japanese, and so that came in handy to help get little Taka Michinoku headed in the right direction. He was a hell of a little hand, quite honestly, but he had to learn to speak some English, or he wasn't going to have a very good chance. And he stayed with us for a while and did well. Never was a problem, and had a lot of talent. So, but we had some keepers in there, as you just mentioned. Some of those guys. Then we brought in Christian Che Resso, and that was on the encouragement of Adam Copeland. Adam was mature beyond his years in that era. And so, but we knew we had guys that we wanted to continue to invest teaching and our time in. And Adam was certainly nobody we didn't think had more potential than Adam. I remember because he worked cheap. I'm not saying that's a red badge of courage. You got to, they're not drawing houses. You're creating a whole new overhead, and you know how that goes in building a business. It's always challenging. So we had a nice little nucleus there. My theory was if we get in this class, if we can get 2 to 4 guys that can go, we believe we go to the next level, then we've done right. Because everybody's not going to make it. More are not going to make it. And if you can't take the fact that some guys are not making it as a failure to your selection process or a failure to the coaching process, then because it's not a failure, you didn't know. How do you know who's going to make it, who isn't? So, but that was a nice little class. I'm glad we wrote all that. You got all that stuff written down because, it's been so long ago. I can't remember who was there at certain times, but that little roster you just read about, I don't know how many Hall of Famers are in that group. There's a few.
A lot of them.
So I felt like we did our job by things like that.
It's interesting to think of all the Hall of Famers in here, but there is a name that I don't know at all. Randy Blackbeard. Does that ring a bell?
Not really. I wonder if Randy was from Canada. I can't remember. And I'm being honest, folks. I'm sorry. I don't read these scripts before we do the show. I like to just go and try to go and recall and things of that nature. Rodney was a big kid. He had the boxes checked for size. More often than not, when these guys don't make it, it's usually it's just aptitude for the business, and you can't teach charisma. Impossible to teach charisma. You got it or you don't. And apparently, we thought Rodney didn't have it. He was a big kid and enjoyable to be around. So he just, our criteria, Conrad, and our expectations were high as hell. we put a lot of pressure on these kids. You got to be good. We're not going to bring you up if you're average. We can hire average without having a camp. There's enough indie wrestlers around to hire average. We don't need you to be average. We need you to be extraordinary or have the potential to be extraordinary. So it was a mixed bag, and the guys that had some had some indie experience, like Val and Adam, they had a head start, and they took advantage of it. All of those guys had good careers there, especially Edge. My God, he's made a ton of money. He's got a great wrestling marriage. He's got beautiful daughters. He's made millions of dollars. He's a Hall of Fame guy, and he was in our first class. I'd say we did pretty good selecting him.
Yeah, I would think so. It's remarkable the success that group has. Meltzer would say, thus far, the camp has been considered a big success, run along the lines of an all Japan dojo where Funk used to train younger wrestlers, including some of the best wrestlers of this generation. Plans at present seem to indicate making this a regular deal. So is that the original idea? Let's just run one camp and see what happens, and then we take it from there?
We're just going to take it from there. We never thought about running one camp or 10 camps. We knew that the concept was solid, a solid idea. If we could create a system around it that would make it work even better. But we didn't have we didn't have a facility. There's things that we needed to have in place that we didn't have. But we were just going to go with it as long as it was still being productive. And as we know, the concept is productive today after all these years. Hell, they got their own TV show on Tuesday nights on USA. So it's a concept that worked for all of us and the talent, more importantly.
Who would be the person recommending talent to come into these dojos? Is this a list that you start? Is it something that Briscoe's working on, or is it a collaborative effort? How do we work on that?
It was a collaborative effort. I didn't want one guy's opinion, because what one guy likes, the other guy's not going to like. So we didn't want that to happen. I didn't want to get to political bullshit. And in case you haven't heard, Conrad, pro wrestling behind the scenes is very political. I hate to break that to everybody out there, but that's kind of where we looked at that. It was just it was a perfect storm for us. I was so, if Vince had said, look, I want you to get off the air and just do this, I might have had a boo-boo face for a couple, 3 days. But I would have been happy to do it. I love it. I wanted to be a coach for so much of my life, in football, particularly, specifically, that I thought that this is a perfect job for me. I like recruiting. I like looking at videos. I like interviewing the kids. I like talking to their families. I approached it as if we were stocking the shelves of a sports franchise, and that's what we are in wrestling, whether it's AEW now where I work or WWE, who's really taken this whole concept to the next level. And I'm proud of what they've done. It's really smart. So, but we're just going to take a class, shall we say, a class at a time. And that concept helped us keep our overhead manageable, because we weren't investing big monies in buildings and things of that nature, equipment, things. So I think we did it right, but we started off slow, because again, it's a new line item on a budget, and it came out of my budget. So I had to make sure that I wanted to make sure my budget was up to speed, and we didn't have an unlimited budget like they seemingly have now. We had to watch our pennies, and that's I use the illustration. I think that Edge and Christian, I kid them about this, that their first contract was about $200 a week.
Yeah.
And now on today's marketplace, that would be, you get put in jail for stealing, as Ernie Ladd would say. You're stealing from the man, Bundy. You fat bastard. You're stealing from the man. And we didn't want to steal from the man. So we were trying to learn on the run, Connie. You ever get to a situation where you're learning on as you go,
Oh, of course, every
all,
day.
every day.
Yes.
When you came up with your Starcade festivals and
Yeah.
events, you didn't know if the some of this was going to work or not.
No, you're just
So
trying so hard.
you plan to do one good one.
Yep.
Let's put our best foot forward and see how we can make this thing work and be even more productive. And that's kind of the concept that we had there with the developmental guys. Let's try a class. Let's get them through it. Let's evaluate how we're training and take it from there. And you asked about the talent. Everybody wanted a relative involved. It's amazing to me how wrestling is. There's so many cousins and family members. So the least of our worries were getting talent to look at. What we realized is that everybody's going to try to get their nephew or their uncle or whatever a job. And a lot of times to appease the existing talents, we would adhere to that. We'd give them a shot, bring them in for 2 or 3 weeks, see what kind of aptitude they have. See what kind of, are they on time every day? Things that just a fundamental soundness. And so I think that we did it the right way in that regard. Small steps have led to major developments. As I mentioned, it's hard to believe that going from that warehouse there at 120 Hamilton to what they have today is nothing short of extraordinary.
I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm legitimately asking because I don't know. I don't think AEW has an official developmental system, but it does feel like QT School, the Nightmare Factory in Atlanta, and Dark sort of serve as an opportunity to
They do.
train raw athletes and then give guys reps. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, it'd be very fair to say. And that's why I think one of the reasons the Dark show that airs on YouTube on Tuesdays was created
Yeah.
to get guys reps, to get them in the ring, work live matches in front of an audience. And, I think that I was always concerned about are some of the guys that have a little bit more experience on the indies, are they going to take this opportunity as seriously? I'm talking about AEW now, by being on a YouTube show. And I was skeptical at the beginning because I thought some of these older guys are going to look at this like, oh, bullshit. I can make more money on the well, you can make more money on the indies, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if the indies pay anymore. I don't keep up with the pay. But point being is it worked out. Again, those small steps is what we had to do. I couldn't go spend a bunch of Vince's money and without having results. When you got 2 or 3 guys that you can earmark or circle or highlight, then all of a sudden everything is justified. So that's kind of where we want to get to make the boss happy. But to do that, we had to have some results. So in other words, we had to have some stars being developed, and we showed him who those guys were, and he liked it.
Once upon a time, JR probably wondered if he could pull off a cowboy hat, and we saw how well that worked. Well, have you ever wondered if you could pull off cowboy boots? Well, Tecovas is going to make it easy. You owe it to your feet to pull on a pair of Tecovas. Being confident isn't about being different, it's about being yourself. And I have to tell you, I have not had a pair of cowboy boots since I was a little boy until last year. I got a pair of Tecovas and I loved them so much. I started bragging about, I guess it was around Thanksgiving. And I found out that my cousins, Derek and Clint, they've been rocking with Tecovas for a long, long time. My dad liked my boots so much that he said, "Hey, where'd you get those?" I got dad not 1, but 2 pair. He absolutely loves his Tecovas. You will love yours too. What I love most about Tecovas is the thing I used to hate about cowboy boots. It felt like you had to break them in, AKA torture your feet for weeks or months before they ever got comfortable. Man, ain't nobody got time for that. I need comfort right out of the box. And that's what Tecovas does. See, Tecovas makes quality Western boots for everyone. Generational ranchers and lifelong cowboys to guys like me, first-time boot buyers. Every one of those boots are handcrafted, and they have over 200 meticulous steps to ensure broken-in comfort that comes right out of the box. Sign me up for comfort, man. Whether it's a long day or a big night, your Tecovas are built to last and impress. You're going to get so many compliments about these boots because there's no compromise between quality and style. And finally, a comfortable pair. It doesn't even seem like that's possible. Plus, with Takova's Best in the West guarantee, you even get free returns and exchanges for 30 days. Right now, you can get 10% off at tecovas.com/grillingjr when you sign up for email and text. That's 10% off at tecovas.com/grillingjr. Tecovas.com/grillingjr. See site for details. Tecovas, point your toes west. Let's talk about your second camp where you guys were indeed looking for some better help. It comes out in the Observer May 18th, 1998. The WWF is doing another camp this week under Dory Funk. Among those at the camp or Solify Fatu, Mike Tierney, John Tenta, Paul Silva, Aaron O'Grady, Vic Grimes, Sean Stasiak, Matt Bloom, Andrew Martin, George Phillips, Emery Hale, David Heath, Darren Drozdoff, and Dan Severt. Of course, we know a lot of these names jump off the page. Fatu, we know, is going to become Rikishi. He'd been around before, but he's here for a fresh coat of paint. John Tenta, of course, same story. The former Earthquake used to headline with Hulk Hogan, but maybe let's see if we can't get him in some different shape here, get him TV ready under a different presentation. We know it works out. He joins the Oddities. Aaron O'Grady, of course, is going to become Crash Holly. Vic Grimes would find a little bit of fame for himself in ECW, falling off a balcony with New Jack. Andrew Martin is going to become Test and have quite a little run. Emery Hale was a name I didn't know right away. Turns out that's the Wall over in WCW, but here he was in 1998. And David Heath, we know, is going to go on to be Gangrel, and, well, the rest is history. But, man, this is quite a class. Again, you're batting 1,000 so far. What's the number one trait? You've told us before when you're running talent relations, reliability is number one.
Right.
When it comes to training a new talent, just an athlete who's not necessarily a veteran in the pro wrestling game, are you looking for somebody who's coachable, or what's the primary attribute you're looking for?
Well, you mentioned the reliability, and that's number one.
Yes.
We want you to practice to start at 8:00 in the ring. You don't show up at 5 minutes to 8. Common sense things, teaching people to be better businessmen. But you can notice this class had a lot of size to it, and I think that's what came from Vince. He liked some of the guys that we had in that first camp. How could you not like Edge, and et cetera, that went on and become great, truly great. But we got some bigger guys in that second class. A lot of those guys you mentioned were huge, 300-pound range, or 6'6", that kind of thing. And so that was always Vince's caveat: size. Simply put it this way: Vince loved guys that if they walked in an airport, heads would turn. So that could be their physique, that could be their height, that could be their weight. Some guys just exuded charisma. So like Dwayne Johnson, he turned heads wherever he went. He turned heads the day I was recruiting him at the little cafe, that little Cuban cafe, when every woman in the restaurant came over to see if we needed something more to drink. And I told this story in some of my one-man shows that, God Almighty, they didn't even work there. They saw him and saw this 6'5", 270-pound handsome guy. They just wanted to get another step closer to him. And
Right.
the guys that are in that restaurant, Conrad, they knew who I was from TV all those years, but they hadn't seen Rock. But they're curious. So they'd come over and talk to me, but be looking at him because they're wrestling fans. And they looked at this new guy as boy, this kid's he's got something. There's something here. I like the way this guy looks. And of course, the women had their own motives, but it gave you a good thumbnail sketch into the little telescope into their personalities, or what their personalities could be. So, but a lot of those guys you mentioned, I'm sure that if I look back on it, a guy like Fatu had so much charisma, still does. He's a hell of a nice guy. Got his own thing going. And he had amazing agility for somebody his size. Same thing we said about Yokozuna, except Fatu was not as big. He didn't get in the 600-pound dilemma. So we got bigger in that next class at the insistence of the chairman.
I'm fascinated talking about, how this all continued to evolve, because at first it's not a full-time thing of just running camps. So even though some guys may have some fundamentals and they feel like they're getting the basics down, they need reps. And so now that USWA has gone under, well, there's an opportunity for a new independent promotion in Memphis. Power Pro Wrestling. Randy Hales is going to open up there. Longtime friend of Jerry Lawler, or at least acquaintance of Jerry Lawler. I'm not sure. But the result is Kurt Angle goes down there and gets some real wrestling experience in front of crowds, trying to do some mic work. And we recently saw even Kurt Angle retweet his first promo here, which was, well, everybody starts somewhere.
Yeah.
But this is important that it's one thing to do it in a dojo environment, in a gym environment. It's another to do it when there's real asses in seats, as you like to say, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's how you judge is your material getting over. It'd be like a stand-up comedian. I've used that analogy a lot on the show that, the stand-up comedian comparison to a pro wrestler is that you're creating content in the ring, and is your audience reacting to it? You're a comedian. Are they laughing at your jokes? Are you slowed down enough to where you can give a setup and then your punchline, and then wait for the laughs to start another round of jokes, joke number 2 type thing. So it was there's a lot of similarities to that, and there still is to this very day, on comparing a wrestler to a stand-up comedian on how they interact with the audience, not the fact that they could do comedy. So I'm not a guy that believes that pro wrestling should be dotted where the strengths are usually comedy. I think comedy is important. I think when it's real and organic and natural, it's a great thing. But to go out of your way to try to be funny and we want you to be a trained pro wrestler and a comedian, I don't think it works.
Well, one of the things that you probably disagree about, but I can't wait to get your take here. Jim Cornette was not a fan of the dojo that we're talking about. He said, quote, "I hated the entire dojo setting and found the wrestlers training with sounds of hammers banging and nauseating smells of sawdust and paint was no way for a wrestler to learn the craft." I mean, I guess there are some drawbacks to the facility, but it feels like it was working.
Yeah.
Is this just a Cornette's personal preference, or do you think maybe, okay, it was less than ideal, we should have done something different?
Well, I think Corny would have been happier if he was running it.
Right.
He's just that old school booker guy. He should be in total control. We gave him and Danny and all those cats down there in Louisville total control. I didn't know what programs they're running. When we sent Brock Lesnar there, I figured, with Cornette and I would discuss it. We discussed everybody. But I think Corny would have been happier sailing his own ship. And that's why I tried to loosen up a little bit on the creative. I didn't do any booking. I didn't say, well, I want you to do this guy on TV. That happened later, and it never worked. It's not a good thing. So I think Corny appreciated the fact that we're trying to train guys and teach the guys respect for the business with a great veteran like Dory Jr. And see how they've come out in the wash. So I just think maybe Corny would like to have been more in charge, and I try to do that. I tried to loosen it up, and Danny Davis ran the business side down there in OVW, and then you had Al Snow and Cornette. Cornette was writing TV, and Al was helping train along with Rip Rogers. So our staff was good. I just think Corny probably would have, in hindsight, I might be wrong here, but I think he probably would have been more comfortable sailing his own ship as opposed to we're putting the boat together and we're going to load it up with talent. Now here they are. They're sailing. They're all yours. I mean, I don't think he was comfortable quite with that. He had to get used to it, let's say. But they did. Look, the results that OVW got for WWE is scary good. Scary good. The one class we sent there, headlined by Brock, Cena, Orton, Shelton Benjamin, Dave Batista. I thought we did a pretty good job of recruiting and selecting and signing guys. All those guys have had very significant careers, headline WrestleManias. made millions of dollars, and that's what I judged it on, quite frankly. So it was, but you always have that issues. You always have those things, Connie, where you're trying to get everybody in place. There's so much insecurity in pro wrestling, even when it comes time to the instructors and things. It just it's hard to give up something, because Cornette would get pissed off about somebody coming to TV, and our fault was to not check and see what the guys were booked, and we screwed some bookings up for him because we bring guys in, and if you ask a guy like Brock Lesnar, you want to go to Covington, Kentucky, and work on Saturday night and drive the ring truck and haul the ring and help put the ring up and all those things, or do you want to go do a dark match on Raw? Well, hell, that's easy. So that's kind of where we were there. We were learning as we went, and when you do that concept, you're bound to make a few mistakes.
I've often heard Bruce talk about how, man, Cornette just did not love Connecticut, didn't like the life, didn't like the politics, and he was ready to have a change. So as the story goes, he comes to you and says something like, "Why don't you let me run a school and a promotion in Louisville, and we can all do it correctly?" And of course, at the time, I believe Danny Davis is running OVW, but the plan, I believe, is for Cornette to buy half the company and move down there and start the relationship. Did you like this idea? I mean, Cornette has even talked about, man, he thought if he hung around here much longer, he's gonna have a freaking heart attack.
Yeah,
He just to get out of here and do something different. Obviously, you have a great mind and talent in Cornette, and you know that this dojo concept has been working. So maybe, hey, having a territory much like we did once before with the USWA is like a partner territory. It could work, and clearly you trust Cornette and he's reliable, et cetera, et cetera. Is that an easy sell for you? And then is it an even easier sell for Vince?
Easy sell for me, and subsequently an easy sell for Vince. We had a little staff there, and we paid their company. We had the talent under contract, and so they were getting paid their weeklies. If you sign a guy for $100,000 a year, you're going to pay him about $1,923 a week. So we will pick up the tab for that. The monies they made at a spot show, the little payoffs, they kept. And but I had the utmost confidence in Corny. I'm trying to think, where did all of this fall to Smoky Mountain? Is Smoky Mountain already come and gone?
Yeah,
or
Smoky Mountain's come and gone. That's right.
But I worked for Corny. Vince actually sent me to help Cornette.
Yes.
As far as working on the air. And but I've been around Cornette since, God Almighty, Conrad, the '80s. I know what kind of mind he has.
Right.
Creative. He loves to take ownership of something, and that's good business in my view. So, but he was a very valuable, very, very valuable in organizing that whole scenario there in Louisville. And again, you go back to the one criteria: results. Who out of that OVW group became a star? A bunch of them. And you can't discount the contributions of Cornette and Danny's staff that they had there, because they got results. And boy, that's what we were needing.
The obvious question here is, what about Dory? I mean, it feels like Dory, after running these camps and seemingly doing a good job, would have had some sort of an opportunity here, but there's been a rumor that perhaps he had a circumstance that meant he wouldn't be returning. And of course, the rumor is maybe his wife Marty was difficult, or maybe alienated herself from folks in the office, or is that all just much ado about nothing? Or
well, there's a little truth. No, there's a little truth to that. There's a little truth to that. I think Dory, basically, if you want to cut right to the chase, had overstayed his welcome. It was a tough deal for him too. He was living in Florida, a nice place, Ocala, where he's still got his facility there, I think, to this day. But I think we're changing systems, and that's how I explained it to Junior. We're growing, we're moving forward. We want to get out of the warehouse, and we want more structure, and we want guys to be be held accountable for all aspects of their professional life. And we need guidance and we need leadership in that scenario. So I think that's kind of where that came. Dory didn't leave there because of Marty, but it's a good dirt story. My God,
Right.
Con, it's great dirt. Just make it up, you know.
Well, fast forward May 3rd, 1999. Here's the Observer. Dory Funk was released from his role as training camp instructor. The idea is that they're moving the camps to Louisville under Jim Cornette when he moves there over the summer, and Danny Davis. Among those in this past week's camp were Jason Arndt, who was the star of the camp, Mark Henry, Tom Howard, Russ McCullough, Stephen Gamlin, Robbie Dix, and Rico Constantino. The idea is in progress, and it's to essentially set up a minor league system where wrestlers will be sent to a Louisville circuit under Cornette, which would be like Class A baseball, and then move up to Power Pro in Memphis, which would be like AAA, and then being brought up to the big leagues. Was that the original plan? Start in Louisville, then go to Memphis, then WWE?
Yeah, we thought we had to have some sort of progress. We had to have progress. We had to have goals for those guys to try to attain and levels to try to earn their spot on those rosters. But that was something like that was what we wanted to do. It just basically ended up where we became so dependent on the results that were being earned and achieved by OVW. They became like the number one developmental territory. And I like their system. I like working with Danny Davis, sharp guy, honest, always give you a straight answer. He answered his freaking phone. He just was a hell of a guy. And he was a tremendous wrestler in his day. One of the Nightmares, masked wrestler, great worker. He was just small, so he never got his chance to prove how good he was on a big stage like WWE because of his size and his age. This gave him a chance to have ownership and to feel more good about himself and his contributions to the business that he's devoted most of his life to. So that was the original goal, stair stepping it. So when you get out of OVW, where do you go? And we used Memphis and Power Pro as a site. Randy Hales was a friend of Lawler's. Randy Hales was a promoter. He lived there in Memphis. Never had a crossword with him ever. Good guy and responsible. So that was our big goal. We're going to have another before they come to WWE. JR, they got to go to someplace else.
Right.
Well, we found out that someplace else was not as good as what we already had in place. At least that's my take on it.
I don't think there's any argument to that. OVW is going to develop quite the reputation. We're about to get into it. But before we do, I want to ask, in your opinion, what was the relationship like between Vince McMahon and Jim Cornette here in 1999?
Contentious. I don't know that Corny's relationship with Vince was ever changed. I mean, they never got along great. But I think, Corny had respect for the business. Therefore, Vince got some of that respect as well for what he had built in WWE and creating an environment where a lot of people like Cornette, myself, and others could make a living in the things we love to do, and that was working pro wrestling. So, but they never really got along. I think Bruce would probably sign off on that deal as well. They just didn't. They had different philosophies, but they had a lot of similarities in some of the fundamental things as far as, they both agreed that we can't get better if we don't have our talents working with other talents that are better than the rookies and are getting plenty of work. So in addition to doing the spot shows in the weekend, I alluded, it's not a joke, Brock Lesnar was the foreman of the ring crew. He drove the ring truck. And then all the other boys were responsible for putting the ring up when they got to the town that they're running for the spot show. So, but Cornette and Vince had a lot of similar likes and preferences and things of that nature. But, there's also that, Cornette, again, I'll go back to this. He wanted to sail his own ship. I don't have a problem with that. I had no problem with that at all. But it was, I guess oil and water is a way to put it. You know,
Yeah.
they both realized that the other had value, but at some point in time, you know, I knew the smart thing for me to do if I want to continue to do business with Cornette and continue to be able to pay him what he had negotiated for, uh, uh, that I needed to get his ass out of Connecticut, or Vince is going to come to me and abruptly say, "I don't want to see Cornette around here anymore," and that could have happened. That could have happened. It didn't, because we got Cornette to Louisville, and I thought Cornette in Louisville was a pretty damn good deal. He was making a decent living. He's running his own territory. He's booking his own TV. I thought that that was good timing. It kept him on board and out of Vince's line of sight. Uh, but you know, he was too valuable. And that's what I explained to Vince. He's too damn. He may be crazy, Vince. You may not ever agree with his philosophy on certain things, but he's really good at other things he does that nobody else wants to do.
Right.
And he did a real good job for us. So, but getting him out of Connecticut probably extended his shelf life immensely during that era.
So we know that Cornette's going to open up camp here in the summer of '99. What's your process with him with talent? Are you doing a weekly check-in? Does he send a report? Does he send you a tape? What does that look like?
We communicated on the phone. I'd travel to Louisville, you know, semi-regularly. And then I had access. Danny would make sure I got tapes so we could see how some of these kids were doing and how they're being utilized on TV. But more often than not, I was fine with it. I just wanted to stay busy and keep moving forward and improving their game, therefore improving their life. Happy talents, or talents that feel good about themselves, are a lot more likely to be successful than those that aren't. And Cornette was that, you know, he was a workaholic, and he used all those years of tape trading and the territory stuff. There's no bigger student of the game than Jim Cornette, even today.
That's right.
You know, he's kind of become that Howard Stern of podcasting. You know, he's got a nice little. He's got 2 podcasts, I think.
He does.
Yeah. So it was. I just thought it was working out real well, but it would not have worked out real well if I had tried to make Corny become the showrunner in Connecticut, because that would have lasted about as long as a fart in church. Ain't gonna hang around long.
You brought up Cornette's podcast. Want to give a shout out to his co-host Brian Last, who I think recently lost his father, and man, that's never good.
I didn't know that. Sorry to hear that.
Hate to hear that. Thoughts and prayers for him and the whole Last family. Man, that's I'm lucky enough to have my dad here, and I don't even want to think about that day. So thoughts and prayers for them for sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about OVW. So you're getting up and running here. The early class, man. Goodness gracious. Brock Lesnar, John Cena, Batista, Randy Orton. Was this just right time, right place? I mean, you want to talk about an all-star cast.
Yeah.
Who deserves some of the credit for helping? I mean, I think we know that you and Brucey both saw John Cena out in California, and
right.
I think you and Briscoe had Lesnar on your radar, but these guys are coming from far and wide, and they couldn't wind up in more capable hands based on the results. I mean, they speak for themselves, do they not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do. Various sources. There was not one specific way that we got prospects. You know, the Lesnar stories, what it is. You know, Gerald and I started recruiting Brock Lesnar when he was a junior in college at the University of Minnesota. You know, we made a deal with the head coach that we wouldn't sign, because Brock would have signed right after his junior year if we had gone for it. I gave my word through Gerald, and Jay Robinson was a coach in Minnesota. He was a teammate at Oklahoma State in a wrestling team with Jerry. So I had motivated, or wanted to motivate Jerry just to live with this kid, because we can't miss on him. We got to get him. And once people had realized we're recruiting him, and we thought that he was going to, you know, he was favored to win the NCAA national championship as the heavyweight, the best heavyweight in college wrestling at any level. We made a deal with Jay Robinson that we would not sign Brock because Brock wanted money. Brock wanted money right away, and he was tired of being broke. I think he was probably getting tired of the camps and the training and the practices and being in school and structured situation. That wasn't his idea of a good time. Bruce and I both saw John Cena working for Rick Bassman out there in L.A. area, Southern California, and he's just he was a can't miss guy. He's the guy that I took a red eye back from California and told Vince, I said, I just saw the guy that's going to headline WrestleMania in about 5 years. And I think he thought I was high or something. I just had that belief that John Cena was it. That was it. Then you look at guys like Batista. Well, his look alone. You talk about turning heads in airports. He had turned heads in a school for the blind. He was scary looking, and as we have seen in this movie success, a very bright, talented guy. Who the hell would have known that the Leviathan had those acting chops? And he did, and he does. I saw him on a preview, I guess you'd say, of something here. It's out now that he's in, and I'm really happy for Dave. He's a real sweetheart of a guy. I remember when Jan got killed, not too long after that, few months, maybe not even that long, I had Dave on my old podcast, and he cried like a baby, and of course, it made me cry like a baby. It's a sensitive guy, and Jan was always a fan of the talent, and was always there for them, no matter what. And then Randy was a little more challenging. I loved his style. I loved his natural aptitude. He was coordinated. He had, I would say he might have been considered to have social issues, but none of those guys I just mentioned didn't have social issues. They're young, they're green, they're on the road. It was a hard thing to for some of them, but we work with them, and sometimes guys would get in trouble or they'd have issues. I might write about that in my next book, because they all have happy endings to those stories. But along the way, the journey was a little bit challenging for some guys. Women, Conrad, women. What's the biggest obstacle? Women, if you're heterosexual.
Yeah.
And most of them are, I believe. As if I don't care, but that's going to start another damn discussion. I'll be like Jerry Jones' pitcher in the 8th grade or something, that Little Rock pitcher that's making the news now, about racism and things of that nature, which I don't even like to get into. It's horrible. It's horrible. There's no justification for it whatsoever. But Randy got dishonorably discharged, as we know, public information, from the Marines. And Vince, was one of his more ceremonial armed forces days. Didn't want to hire him. I said, well, his grandpa was great. His dad was great for you for many years. This kid's a baby. He is immature. His dad was on the road most of this young man's life, so he didn't have a strong father figure always in his home. I said, I believe he deserves a chance. And by the way, boss, didn't you get some second chances? Because Vince knew his dad didn't want him to be in the business. We've talked about that. People have talked about that for years.
Yeah.
Why don't we give him a chance? I said, he's going to have a contract that has 90-day outs. That means he really has, I could sign him for a 5-year contract, but we can get out of it with 90 days notice. It was typical. That wasn't, they're screwing these guys. No, just do your job, work hard, improve, do the right things, and you got a great contract. But if you do the bed, then we can get rid of you. You got to have checks and balances.
Right.
So I think that's what salvaged Randy's career there is I told Vince, well, if he doesn't work out, I'll get rid of him. And I got no problem doing that if I have to, but I don't think we'll ever have to worry about that. We did have to settle some, not settle, but we had to address some issues. But like I said earlier, Conrad, all those guys in that picture, that graphic, has had challenges to varying degrees in varying levels of their profession. But boy, the upside, that's what you got to gamble on. The upside is what you plan for. And I think we did well with those guys. So that's kind of what we did. And of course, Danny and Cornette, they knew that we were high on these guys. They knew that they were priorities, and I wanted them to be treated as such. Give them responsibilities, put them in matches where they can work returns, and I don't want anybody to come talk to me about that they did 2 jobs on TV in the last month. I don't care. What difference does it make? Are you shitting me? This stuff is fiction. So I got a lot bigger fish to fry than to worry about how somebody's feelings going to be hurt because they had to do a quote unquote job. We say that like it's dirty.
Right.
It's not.
No.
If you're really good at putting somebody over, you know how to protect yourself, and you know that it's not a bad thing. So anyway, those guys they had to be coached up, and they had I wasn't going to give up on them, and there were opportunities to do that. So, but we didn't. Thank God.
While OVW is getting cranked up, Memphis Power Pro Wrestling is going to fold. So now it's official. It's all Cornette. But there are affiliations that are set up around the same time. IWA Puerto Rico and Ultimate Pro Wrestling, UPW. There's an old saying that we've heard a lot that I want to bring up to you. Don't let Vince see someone too early. And we've heard reports of this where he just falls in love with a guy, tries to fast track him, and sometimes maybe they're not quite ready for it.
Right.
Does this environment eliminate some of that?
A little bit, because he didn't, with them being in Louisville, Vince ain't going to pass through Louisville. I'm going to be in Louisville next week, JR. I'm going to pass through the guys. He ain't going to Louisville. Now, when they were in the warehouse, the same facility that voiceovers and TV production was being done, he passed through those doors all the time.
Right.
And would see guys. So we protected ourselves a little bit on that matter by when we moved it to Louisville. But if guys had a real good TV match, and I knew the guys that Vince had a special interest in, like Brock, for example, then I'd showcase Brock, give Vince a 3-minute match or something. And of course, somebody's going to say, well, what can you teach them and what can they learn in 3 minutes? You can learn to manage 3 minutes. You can maximize your fucking minutes. That's what you can do. Don't tell me about how much match time they got to have and who's going to go over and who's getting a push, brother, and all that shit. I could care less. Never cared. Somebody said, I saw something. Well, Lesnar did a job on television. He's 20 years old. He just learned how to tie his wrestling boots here a while back. You kidding me?
Right.
So, it's just, you had some of the old wrestling elements came along for the ride. But for me, it never sold. You couldn't sell me yay or nay if a guy his win-loss record didn't mean shit to me. So, and it just didn't. I just didn't see I want you to learn to block and tackle.
Right.
Not how pretty you are on the team picture. And we had some bitches that could block and tackle, brother.
Well said. The purchase of WCW brings a whole lot of new talent into the fold and maybe an upheaval of this developmental system. And so as a result, we're going to go ahead and create a new association with Les Thatcher and the Heartland Wrestling Association. What can you tell us about how this came to be? I mean, would this have just been way too much for OVW to try to tackle?
Well, it's getting too crowded. And guys, because when you get too crowded like that, Conrad, you end up shortchanging some of the talents on their one-on-one instruction. And there's more to this thing than just learning how to execute a headlock takeover. I need to know that you can tell time. I need to know that you can be at work on time. I need to know that you're working on your body, and all those things play out.
Right.
So no, I think that we needed another place. Les had a gym. He had a facility. Les Thatcher, by the way, is a hell of a trainer
Yes.
and a damn good man. So I'm getting these guys around quality human beings because we want quality human beings developed, so that if they get lucky enough to come to the main roster, that they're prepared mentally and physically. Well, I'll tell you this: a lot of guys that their biggest enemies are themselves. They want to shortcut it. They want to take, they want the big money. They want, it's like a fox in a hen house. They tasted the chicken. Now they want some more. So that could be good, but you got to manage it. So Les was just a very valuable asset, a good man, still is, still going strong, does seminars and things like that. But I did some broadcasting with Les in Smoky Mountain. Always loved working with him. Great voice. If I had his pipes, I might make a living at this stuff. But he was a hell of a guy, and I'm glad that we got to work with him for the short time seemingly that we did. But things kept evolving. I saw on this sheet on our format here today that I can't remember where it was, but we spent $1.1 million of Vince's money on the developmental program in 1 year, and that was about what I had to play with. I spent everything I had.
Yeah.
I spent every ounce of money that we could squeeze, and to Vince's credit, he approved everything. So it was good. It was he saw the value. He saw that we had reached our max on repackaging the Bulldog as a figure of speech.
Yeah. Well, it comes out, not too long after you start the Heartland thing. That's over. You cut ties with Heartland and you let a bunch of the folks go. Easy Money, John Heidenreich, Mike Sanders, BJ Payne, Horace Hogan, on and on and on. A lot of the folks are moved over, or a handful of folks are moved back to OVW. Some go to the main roster, but that's a wrap. And Meltzer would say, overall, the word was that Jim Ross, who heads the developmental program, was ordered to cut the budget roughly in half because of the downturn in company business. And of course, we've talked about it a lot here on the program. On the heels of WrestleMania 17, when Austin turns heel, well, business starts to take a tumble.
Yeah.
And as that does, well, we get new budgets. And here's where it comes. In 2001, the company spent $1.1 million for the fiscal year on its developmental program. There was no specific figure listed in any company documents at this point for 0102 listing how much was spent on developmental. But if he's saying you're going to have to cut it in half, this is a tough deal. And, we have to do what we have to do. And Meltzer would once again state, with the state of the industry as it is, with new stars being badly needed worse than perhaps any time in the history of the business, without any companies left for the WWE to raid, this is a program that needs to be expanded, not constricted.
Right.
The company idea is to have a 20-man developmental roster based in Louisville with weekly reports and more frequently sending road agents and office people to Louisville to keep tabs on the talent. Listen, I could get this, I guess. Maybe if we thought it was too crowded and there were too many folks, maybe we're looking for more quality over quantity. Maybe we had a lot of bodies that we were hoping one day could, live up to their potential. But if we just kept our A players and we cut our bottom, whatever it is percentage wise, then maybe that's really what we're looking for. It's not necessarily somebody who could be on the main roster, but somebody who could be a top guy. Is that basically it?
That's it. I signed guys. I used to tell Vince this all the time, and he bought into it because it's true that when I sign guys or I finalize deals with guys that other talents that were brought to me, you always looked at it in one way. Can this individual potentially at some point in the sooner than later, can they headline WrestleMania? Okay, go back and look at that little graphic you had. Orton, Brock, Cena, Batista, all headline WrestleManias. Now, I can't tell you how much money that made the company, their performances at their respective WrestleManias.
Right.
but it's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah.
So that alone, those 4 guys, that alone would allow you to validate the system in general. So, but I wasn't on the inside of a budgetary budget aspects. Easy for me. I'm sorry. But we had some other guys here. I've always said that Shelton Benjamin was the best athlete I signed in that group. Best pure athlete we had. He just didn't have the personality at that time to stand up. You got Cena. Just looking at Brock, you ain't got to say a word. He's a freaking Greek god, and he looks invincible and all these things. But personality-wise, Orton had it. Batista had it. Didn't know he had it, but he had it. And then he finally discovered it, and it became a huge star, as we discussed earlier, in movies and so forth. So I just that system worked because of the foundation we built on those 4 guys we just talked about. Those WrestleMania headliners. And if we weren't going to get there by repackaging the Bulldog, wasn't going to happen. And somebody's a Bulldog fan or family member, get pissed off at you. I'm not just pointing out Davey. The issue was that was the concept. Well, we'll get this guy. He's a pretty good worker. We just need to get the new Bruce Pritchard coat of paint on him, and he'll be okay. That's like my old deal. I get kidded about a lot. Just teach him a new hold.
Right.
And there's more to it than that, but it makes good cannon fodder, good jokes. And so, yeah, that's a scenario there. You only got to get a few hits. And my goal was always WrestleMania. If I thought a guy had a chance to work WrestleMania and get over and be a main eventer in that level, I'm going for it.
Let's talk about a criticism from Dave Meltzer. He says essentially that because we're recruiting top athletes, we're looking for a certain type. And without Eric Bischoff and to a greater extent Paul Heyman, we might not have the Chris Jerichos and Chris Benoits and Eddie Guerreros or the Dudley Boys or Mysterio or Tajiri, or because the idea is these guys don't necessarily look like what you're looking for in this era. Is that a Vince edict?
Bit.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit. Vince is big on looks, Connie.
Yeah.
That's not a secret in this business. He's big on looks. Illustration, Brockus. No aptitude to speak of. But he looked great. And he was All-American on 8x10.
Yeah.
But he couldn't work. And so enough people told Vince, because I was telling Vince, I want to cut this guy. And he didn't want to cut him. I thought my track record was pretty good, but I was willing to do what the boss told me because he paid my check. But I think that you got to gamble a little bit. You got to gamble a little bit. And we had guys. Look, I don't know that I believed in the very beginning that Adam Copeland was going to headline WrestleMania, but I thought he had a fighting chance if he kept developing his body, and he's such an amazing student of the game that he'd be prepared when his time came. But I didn't have the confidence simply on the look that he was going to become this big star, like I perceived Brock was going to become, for example. But he over succeeded that, and but it was just hard. You got to gamble on some of these cats, man. And as long as they're doing the right thing and they're coming to work on time and they're going to the gym, they're working on their bodies, they don't have any off-field issues, then let's see what happens. Let's continue to play this thing out.
All right, let's talk about that ding dong and how you can get it real hard with Blue Chew. You know what to do. Check out Blue Chew Max, though. This is new. If you've tried Blue Chew before, it's worth another look because Blue Chew Max is here and it combines the active ingredients of Viagra and Cialis into one chewable. These are like the tag team specialists for your dong. They're going to get you harder, faster, and harder than ever before. Come on now, like a double drop kick. Ricky Morton would be proud. Hey, did I mention that you can get your first month of Blue Chew free? You see, great sex is just a few clicks away. You sign up at BlueChew.com. You consult with one of their licensed medical providers. And once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew's tablets are made right here in the USA. They're prepared and shipped directly to your door. And the best part is it's all done online. Now that means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Just rock hard ding dong, almost on command, thanks to our friends at Blue Chew. You'll be able to stomp a mud hole in it and walk it dry. You'll find out if your wiener is actually tougher than a government mule. Good God Almighty, she's been broken in half. As God is my witness, okay, you get the idea. Make life easier by getting harder and discover your options at BlueChew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. You can try your first month of Blue Chew free when you use our promo code JR. Just pay $5 shipping. That's promo code JR. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. Hey, let's talk about Tough Enough here for a minute, because in the middle of us doing all of this with the developmental and, hey, there's no budget for this and there's no budget for that, we're still running a doggone TV show, and we're letting people who are on that TV show on TV, including, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody, Jackie Gaeta and Christopher Nowinski. And it's in the Observer that a lot of people are saying, hey, wait a minute, with all this talent that we got down languishing in developmental, who's not getting a call up, how are these folks who are much greener with much less experience, how are they on TV? And of course the answer is, well, because they were already on TV. They're established to this audience. Is there more to it than that?
Not really. I mean, Nowinski was a Harvard graduate. He started on the football team there. I think they're worried about the wrong thing. I mean,
I agree.
He's a smart kid. He's doing great work with the concussion protocol, because that's what put him out of the game. And so I got all the time in the world for Chris Nowinski. And if you look at his body, you look at his background, his education. Hey, to get a Harvard degree, you don't just, it ain't like going to, Alabama A&M.
Okay.
Well, it's not. It's a big deal.
Not. It is.
And he started it and he finished it. He started Harvard and he graduated. He finished his journey. Jackie Gaeta was involved in it because of her look. And she was a pretty good athlete, actually. So, but neither of them had the aptitude that you covet because of the lack of experience, lack of opportunity. Tough Enough was a television product. Tough Enough was not a talent relations scenario. It wasn't a talent relations, out of my account. I think some of it came out of my budget. When we signed them, they came out of my budget. But Kevin Dunn loved the concept, and we had broadcast partners that were entertained, loved the concept. So, that's how that worked. But it was a good idea for a TV show, but it wasn't completely underwritten philosophically by talent relations. The good thing about it, I think this is, we used a lot of real key talents because they were getting television exposure. They're getting it back on TV. Austin made a lot of Tough Enough episodes. He liked it, for example. So Tough Enough was a TV byproduct that came out of Kevin Dunn's mind and Vince. So, and I like the concept. I like the concept a lot. I think that my department lost some control because we didn't have any hand in selecting talents to go on to be on it. And I think again, track record. I'm big on track record, Conrad. Prove it to me. So, and I didn't feel a part of that as much as I did the OVWs of the world, so forth. So in any event, it was unique times, and there's where the politics come into play. Well, this is his idea. Well, this is their idea. And then the second guessing would start about this guy's too short, this guy's too small, So the ugly head of wrestling politics started peeking around the corner.
Let's talk about some politics, because Meltzer would be pretty critical and say Steve Bradley was having matches with Kurt Angle 3 years ago in Memphis when he was the Flair and Angle was the Sting. He's still only 26, and he was a constant source of amazement because not only was he the best worker of the developmental crew, aside from someone like Canyon, but he was also a strong promo and in great condition. Sadly, of course, Steve is no longer with us these days, but it does feel like The guy who wrestled as Reckless Youth, Tom Carter, he's just hanging around down here for a long time. So is Steve Bradley. And Meltzer would say this: there's been a much talked about systematic problem where both Danny Davis and Les Thatcher are training wrestlers for Mid-South wrestling in the 80s, instilling old school values and training, when the WWE is currently something totally different. And nobody is quite sure these days what it's trying to be.
Right.
Due to the level of the full-time WWE competitors, most of whom are very good workers, they're made better by working with good people up to 200 nights a year. And it's impossible for a developmental system where guys work, if they're lucky, 100 to 125 matches against generally equally inexperienced talent before smaller crowds to walk in and be as proficient as most of the crew. I think that's fair, but I do want to ask about, hey, do you think they're on to something with Danny Davis and Les Thatcher is training them for the way wrestling used to be, not the way WWE is now?
Fundamentals. I don't buy that whatsoever.
Okay.
None. Zero. You can't sell that one to me, Connie. Fundamental soundness doesn't go out of style. I don't give a shit if it's Florida or in the 70s or Mid-South in the 80s or wherever. There's certain elements that are always in place, and that's essentially the art of storytelling. And the other things that are you come along with a prospect, the fact that they're working out hard, their body's getting looking better, all those things. So no, I don't buy that particular argument, but again, that's where the politics come in. Everybody's got an idea. Well, we don't need that guy.
Right.
Have you met him? You talked to him? Oh, no. Have you been around him whatsoever? Oh, no, I just don't look. Oh, so it's all about the look. You haven't peeled the onion back. You talked to this guy or this lady, whatever. So it was, I won't buy that one. Fundamental soundness does not go out of style.
Let's talk a little bit about politics. It's written in the Observer here. Politics and paying dues create resentment, and it's a system that is getting more frustrated as economics collapse and new superstars are needed. And there are no top guys in other territories that have gotten stale and can be rated to create fresh top matchups. There's been infighting that the developmental territories aren't creating marketable stars. The counter is when the guys are brought in, they aren't given effective pushes and are doomed to fail.
Oh.
Now, we know we're going to overcome a lot of that, but a guy like Batista, he did come out carrying a collection box with Diva on it first. And well, some of these early presentations are not all that awesome. Now, then you get a guy like Brock Lesnar, and man, he's just off to the races right away. There's probably something too, if you present them as a star, they'll be a star, right, Jim?
Yeah. If they got to believe they're going to be a star. They got to have the self-confidence that they got star quality. The company believes in me. I just got to continue the course and continue to get better with each and every workout. And that was always the concept. I always got a kick out of this guy's, they don't have anybody ready or this something. How do you get them ready without work?
Right.
Without practice. Yeah, I'll Robert Iverson your ass. Practice. You're talking about practice, man.
Allen Iverson, but I know what you get.
Who did I say?
Robert Iverson, but I know who you're talking about.
Oh, you knew Robert Iverson was one of the best high school players I ever saw for Tulsa.
Allen Iverson did okay too.
Oh, hell yeah. Pretty good point guard. And, he was also the top quarterback in the state that year in Virginia. So he was a hell of an athlete, to say the least. We had guys that were getting ready, but they had to get ready. And they weren't. It takes some time. Nobody's got patience. And everybody's got a goddamn opinion. That's what I said earlier in the show. I wanted to separate. I wanted those guys, those key players that were close to Vince, to buy into my concept. Patterson and Patterson was very good. Patterson loved that concept of the developmental territory, and I'm sure Bruce did too. You got a chance to affect a talent's life and to get them motivated. So anyhow, it was I just don't buy that other deal. You got to have a whole card full. It's like playing baseball. You got to have 9 players.
Right.
I don't know how many players you got to have in wrestling, but you got to have more than 2 or 3. And I thought we had, those guys that headline WrestleMania, wasn't a bad place to start. They were the foundation for coming out of the Attitude Era into the Ruthless Aggression Era. And I'm not going to take blame for creative on how they were booked. That was not my job. And I didn't have any influence in that area, thank God, because I'd probably been like Cornette, a little crazy. So I don't believe the cupboards were bare and Meltzer's criticisms and stuff about it. Again, everybody's got a way of doing it. Everybody's got
Right.
their concept, and I don't buy into that. And I'm biased too. I have to give that.
Well, yeah, that's why this is fun. I mean, you were there. Meltzer would give some props and say Thatcher in particular had a tough job. Although well liked by many, he was given a crew of wrestlers trained in a fast-paced, high-spot-oriented WCW style at the power plant, who had already gotten habits instilled to them. Some of them already had a taste of stardom. That's probably tough.
Yeah.
And then he says Cornette and Davis have to try to keep morale up and explain to trainees why Bradley, who seemingly is everything everyone else wants to be, is still in developmental, but guys like Nowinski and Johnny the Bull are getting a chance. And Meltzer would say this, and ultimately the biggest problem of all is explaining why management and coaches want all the young guys to get off steroids, occasionally even testing, and also advising them to do so, while at the same time, the guys who get the opportunities and survive the cuts for the most part are the guys with the best bodies.
Yeah, very hypocritical on our end.
Yeah.
What are you going to say?
Yeah.
A lot of guys are using.
Yes.
But I stand again. That's not why they got over.
Right.
Anybody that believes that your physique is the only thing you need to have should look up Brockus again.
Yes.
And there are others. They have great bodies, but no intimate, infinite skill set. And if you don't have some of that, those intangibles, Conrad, you're not going to make it. You're just not going to make it. So I am defensive of that whole scenario. But I told you at the beginning of the show what I was worried about. Everybody when they see something successful, they want to become a part of it.
That's right.
And then they want to be a decision maker. And that led to problems.
Do you remember there being any blow-ups that you had to manage in developmental, whether it was Vince or some of the talent or some of the folks who ran it?
Oh, yeah, you have little dust-ups every now and then. Talents jealous of each other, whatever. Sure. It's a personnel thing. You got human beings and you got strong personalities, and you got guys with a definite sense of urgency because they knew by getting called up, they're going to make more money. And that's what everybody was there for, to make more money.
Let's talk a little bit about, when you eventually are replaced as head of talent relations by Johnny Ace, that means that Johnny Ace is now going to step into your spot in helping handle some of these developmental relationships too. Could you see the writing on the wall that maybe Johnny Ace and Jim Cornette weren't going to see eye to eye all the time?
Oh yeah. That was easy.
Yeah.
That wasn't hard, and of course a new guy gets a job. He wants to put his own spin on it, his own feel. And I never had any problem trusting Cornette. I didn't always agree with him, to be perfectly honest. But that's okay too. We've known each other for, God almighty, since the mid '80s. And even though I know he's a little crazy, but so am I, that was what it was. I had a hard time as time went on trusting Laurinaitis. And that's sad to say, but that's how it worked. And I hired him. I gave him a job when he needed it. And then I got, I don't think he treated me quite right. Again, he was wanting to show Vince he's a better manager than JR and all these things. And so now his ass is without a job, and he deserves the goddamn misery that he's living, that I perceive that he's living. And I didn't like how he treated me. So this is not about me. This is about the developmental program. But I started losing a lot of confidence in him. Johnny just wanted to be sure he was seen with Vince. He's a good-looking kid, all that stuff, and he hadn't had Bell's palsy like I had. He had a leg up on his look. Vince likes looks, which is always astonishing to me. How the hell that I was on the air that long, 26 years, with a less than advantageous look. And it's one of the reasons I say is because none of you bastards are going to outwork me.
Right.
I'm going to be the best at what I do in the business. That was always my goal. It's still my goal every week. But that's the competitiveness in me. But yeah, Ty Bailey seemed like a decent guy. He was benign. He had been neutered and spoon fed what to say and how to look and all those things. So I'll say this: Laurinaitis played the game, played it well, and but I didn't appreciate. I don't think he treated the talent as fairly. He had agendas, and I'm not saying I didn't ever have an agenda. I'd be lying, but I didn't have as many as he did, in my opinion. So it was just again politics, man. Politics.
Help me understand when you say he had agendas. What does that mean?
Well, he had an agenda that he wanted. He's going to placate Vince.
Yeah.
I wanted to placate Vince too. So I'm not saying I was different. I just handled it differently.
Right.
I made decisions without Vince's. I didn't have to get in a situation where I'm going to have to okay everything get everything okayed through the old man. He trusted me. I don't know that Vince ever really truly trusted Laurinaitis, and we've kind of seen how that relationship has worked out and evolved. I don't want to be in that position. It's unhealthy for relationships, families, the company. And so you see how it ended. Kind of ended the way many of us thought it might. So that's what I'm saying. He went out of his way to make sure he stayed in front of Vince all the time. And there's not a day went by that I didn't talk to Vince. Phone, texts, or meetings. But I never went out of my way to, hey, Vince, guess what I did today?
Right.
You'd be so proud of me. Well, first of all, Vince ain't proud of shit.
Yeah.
He's just not.
Right.
It's not a big knock. It's just the way that he is.
Right.
And Laurinaitis played that up. And I don't know. It was a bad time for me personally. And it was sad to see what I tried to help build become what it was. But I was sure as hell happy that Triple H finally got involved. And it's made a massive difference in the NXT brand. Before that, Florida Championship Wrestling. I used to go down there all the time. When I got taken out of the position of being in charge, I didn't quit working. I'm going on the road, and I'm going to try to help these guys. I'm going to try to be there to help the promoters. Steve Kern in Florida, and Cornette and Danny in Louisville, things of that nature. So I was on the road a lot and enjoyed the heck out of it. Just really did enjoy it a lot. Especially going to Florida was cool. The weather was always nice. That's where I'm sitting right now. And it was just cool. I didn't lose touch with my creation.
Let's talk a little bit about somebody who maybe is going to lose their cool. There's a pretty famous story down in OVW when they're trying to get over and establish this boogeyman character, and Cornette still has his hands around OVW. He wants his hands around Santino Marella's neck. It blows up, and Cornette blows his stack when Santino maybe doesn't sell the boogeyman as well as he should. And allegedly, it results in Cornette slapping him. When that word gets back to Stamford, I think Cornette's maybe going to get his hand slapped a little bit. What do you remember about that?
His days are numbered.
Yeah.
You can't do it. He took the bat out of my hands. And, of course, I'd already been replaced. So, unfortunate. Should never have happened. I don't know that Santino knew how to sell or what he was supposed to sell.
Right.
I saw he came to one of the AEW shows. Maybe it was in Toronto. Probably was. Here a while back, and we laughed about that moment. Cornette's lucky he didn't get killed. Cornette's lucky that Santino didn't beat the shit out of him, because he could have, and it could have been very, very ugly, quite honestly. But in any event, that should never have happened. It makes the decision maker defenseless.
Right.
So,
Yeah. What can you say?
Yeah, I really, like I said, there's so many aspects of Cornette's knowledge and stuff that I pulled from and I utilized. He's really gifted in that area, but his temper, and over the years, it seems like it's maybe gotten worse. I'm not sure, but I don't. It's just sad how these things happen. We didn't need him slapping talent,
Right.
and but he made a mistake.
There's a lot of changes that go on once you leave. Deep South Wrestling, Jody Hamilton, that becomes one of them. Mike Bucci gets involved. Eventually, that too closes. Florida Championship Wrestling starts up in 2007. At the time, it's run by Steve Kern. And of course, eventually that's going to become NXT. But the OVW thing comes to an end in 2008. Meltzer would have this to say. Johnny Laurinaitis made it official on February 7th. The WWE was cutting all ties with Ohio Valley Wrestling. The decision was expected. WWE has clearly lost interest in the territory, with almost all the new signees being sent to Florida. The feeling was that with much of the talent and management living in the Tampa area, it was better for a developmental group to run there. In addition, with the money WWE had spent in getting the FCW territory off the ground, they needed to corporately justify it by having it as the home for all of the developmental talent. Some time back, WWE sent a press release out saying they expected a new Florida Championship Wrestling promotion to have 70 wrestlers under contract, and from that point on, it appeared as if OVW's days were numbered. So eventually, we do know it becomes FCW and then eventually NXT. But at least at first, it's written here that OVW at first was pretty significant priority when the company, since it was essentially Ross's pet project. They would send top stars down there every few weeks to help train the young wrestlers and work the TV shows and big shows. Even Steve Austin, Undertaker, Kane, and Mick Foley worked some of the bigger shows.
You think Austin and Kane and Undertaker went down there because their loyalty to Johnny Laurinaitis?
They did not.
Shit, no. They went down there because they truly enjoyed working with the young guys. We took good care of them payoff-wise for their time there, and it created some working capital for the promotion. That's why they were there, and it worked out very well. So, when an Undertaker walks into your gym, so to speak, everybody's going to look, pay attention. Same way with Steve. They are at a level, or they were at a level that everybody should be aspiring to be as well. And that's what the guys were looked up. They listened. So it was I thought that was a smart booking. I thought that worked out real well. And those guys knew it meant a lot to me. And they knew I was going to take care of them on their payday, which is still the bottom line, as old Stone Cold would say. So, yeah, it was, but we got so many cooks in the kitchen, Conrad.
Yes.
Sometimes that just don't work. Too many personalities. Everybody wants credit. Everybody wants to look at me, look what I did, all those things. And it got to be where it wasn't as much fun.
Let's also mention that even though Austin and Undertaker and Foley and Kane, and they all came through OVW, Triple H never did. Meltzer had this to say. There were always people critical of it, talking about OVW, and it survived numerous times when it would have been axed. Sometimes Vince would lose his cool over something and decide to shut down all of developmental, but then be talked out of it because the independents, which focus on smaller guys in a completely different style, weren't developing talent that would do what WWE wanted. Triple H was a heavy critic of the program, even during its heyday, because much of the talent would come in, and it was just a huge step from working before 300 people and now 10,000 people. And he'd say that Cornette and Davis weren't teaching the wrestlers how to draw money. I'm not trying to pick on Hunter here, but I think OVW did pretty well.
It did. Again, you get into a scenario where it's not his idea.
Right.
and he's another alpha male that wants to be in charge.
Yes.
And I got no problem with that, quite frankly. He resurrected that whole damn area, did Hunter, and if it weren't for him, there sure as hell would be no NXT, not even a chance. So, but he had the vision. We shared the same visions.
Yes.
The little nuances of, well, let's push this guy, let's push that guy. Who's going to get the push? Who's going to get this or that? You know, I don't know. Take it easy. The concept was a like theory by those that, including Hunter. We all knew we had to develop new stars, and now it's probably we had that 1 year where we spent 1.1 million. What do you think the budget is now?
That's a lot more than that.
Damn right it is. They got talents making that much money.
Yes.
One talent. So figure that out. It's a good deal. That's how you attract good people. You bring them in, qualify them, and you train them up. And I have great admiration for what Hunter's done in the developmental. It's I think that's, we talked about earlier in the show about, William Regal. William Regal is a huge proponent of the developmental area. And he had a lot to say, a lot to do with the success of NXT. So a lot of people that I respected and I liked, I enjoyed working with, were on the same page as I was. We just took different routes to get to our destination. And that's not a downer. That's not a negative. It's just a different philosophy. So that's kind of where I see that deal. I got over the fact that just because somebody disagrees with you doesn't make them totally wrong or you totally right or whatever. It just doesn't. So Hunter's done a fabulous job of keeping that brand afloat and building it and developing it. And, there's a lot of those young talents I see on TV occasionally that I enjoy, but they're spot guys. A lot of them are spot guys. But then there's a good group down there that aren't.
Right.
They're good workers. I remember going to I can't remember what they call their show when they did when they did their showcases.
Takeover,
yeah. I sat on the front row with little Jan and I when Finn Balor made his debut. And I'm thinking, gee, this son of a bitch is ready to go right now.
Yes.
Put him on the WrestleMania publicity posters.
Yes.
This he's fantastic.
Yes.
So there were a lot of those guys were discovered and brought in and things that's really helped a lot. So,
well, let's also say this. He ain't really an NXT creation. That guy was a top guy in New Japan before he came over. But listen, everybody has their critics. Even Batista was critical of OVW, saying once that he learned more in a few days from Fit Finley than he did his 2 years in OVW. And I do want to mention that, the whole mess that is OVW in the end and the controversy when FCW gets going, it has critics too. And Meltzer would say that a lot of people are calling it fast food wrestling training because it's one warehouse with 4 rings set up, and a lot of people are strongly against it. And I guess there was a lot of contention for a long time because Johnny Ace wanted to have 2 rings in OVW because you could train more people at the same time. And those in OVW were strongly against it. Right. And it's even in the Observer that Tom Pritchard was the biggest opponent of this idea of having multiple rings in a camp. And it might have even been one of the reasons he was fired. And Meltzer would say, while guys can get more time in running the ropes and doing athletic drills with more rings, between the noise and the split group, when it comes to learning lessons of how to work, you simply can't get enough hands-on instruction in a class of that many people with so much going on at once. And I think that just comes down to a philosophy, but
that's all.
Once upon a time, we made a decision here in this opportunity to say, hey, we're going for more quality than quantity.
Right.
But going back to 70 wrestlers, that sounds like quantity.
Yeah, it is. It was. And you lost the uniqueness of it. You lost the specialness of it. Uh, just, individual. Look, ask any parent, Conrad. You want your kids sitting in a classroom of 100 other students, or do you want them in a classroom of 25 or 30?
Right.
I mean, it's just common logic. Of course, it's better if you get more individual uh, teaching and coaching. So, but as this thing continued to evolve, it became extremely political. And there's a point there, I don't remember when, where I was thinking to myself, self, you need to back out of this little deal.
Yes.
You did all you could do. You started something that's worked out really well, and you're not in that role anymore because of politics and a disloyal bastard that I hired that was going to stab me in the back. And that's when I realized that the wrestling business had started changing, and I didn't want to necessarily be a big part of it.
Let's talk a little bit about the end of FCW. You actually appeared at the last TV taping. It's a sellout, turn away crowd. You would write that there were lots of kids that stood out: Rollins, Steamboat, Cesaro, Oh No, Dallas, Wyatt, Maddox, The Ascension, Big E, Jason Jordan, Page, several others. You talked about how you loved the Dean Ambrose and William Regal stuff, that shockingly real physical conclusion. And of course, after that, we transition into NXT, and we see the likes of Seth Rollins and Cesaro and Bray Wyatt and Page. And I mean, it's phenomenal what they put together in NXT. Of course, the Performance Center officially opens in Orlando, not Tampa, but Orlando,
right,
on July 11th, 2013. And they've never really looked back. And that looks like what we're looking at if you're watching on YouTube or over on adfreeshows.com. Like the progression of the power plant. Is that the way you kind of looked at it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, look, it had a power plant feel to it to me.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that's wrong, but I was never overwhelmed with the success out of the WCW power plant.
Right.
I thought we trumped them in that particular little competition, if there was such a thing.
I'd agree.
So, yeah, it was, but it just got too much bullshit. My cousin wants a job. I got this friend. I met him at the gym, or whatever.
You think the roster got too big?
Yeah,
yeah,
and hiring the wrong people. Nepotism's a pain in the ass, and it's nepotism in wrestling has never been more prominent in any promotion. All promotions, husband, wives, cousins, all these things. So it sounds like I'm bitter. I'm not bitter. I'm just saying that inherently causes problems. Managing the talent roster all those years, the one thing that was new that had not been previously done was managing females in the locker room. And you got a bunch of horny guys, a lot of alpha male feel, and you got a lot of horny women with a lot of alpha women feel, and it takes special management and paying attention, and with a good staff that's paying attention. So it was hard. It was hard, Connie, to separate some of that stuff. But yeah, I remember doing that. I remember calling that match with Regal and Ambrose. Now, John Moxley. It was great, and we knew Moxley was special at that time, no doubt.
Hey, let me ask this. We've talked a lot about developmental here, and we're wrapping it up and going to put a bow on it. But if you were a wrestler coming up today, and you had an opportunity to, or maybe you were not a wrestler coming up today, you want to be a wrestler coming up today.
Yeah.
Would you recommend trying to go through the developmental system as just an athlete who has no real wrestling experience? Or do you think there's value to the independents? Because there are two ways to get this thing done. You could go the Baron Corbin route, if you will, start with NXT and get down at the Performance Center and cut your teeth and work your way up, or Go out and bust your ass on the indies, learn a new hold, as you like to say, and try to get in that way, either there or AEW or somewhere else.
I don't know if there's a better, the better of the two. Uh, it might take you longer when you start clean, start fresh.
Yes.
And you go straight into the performance center. They've had success there with that. So that's one school of thought. And it depends on the talent, but also a guy that's been out there and paid his dues or her dues on the indies, that works too. You got to have some experience and you got to work with those fundamentals and all the things that go along with becoming a pro wrestler in today's world, how to pay your taxes. I was talking to some guys the other day about quarterlies.
Yes.
And they looked at me, the ones I was talking to, looked at me like incredulous. Now, what is this quarterly thing again? It's your taxes. You're an independent contractor. You're responsible for paying your taxes. The worst thing you can do, a lot of wrestlers do it, you just don't file. And man, that goes against my grain. You got to file because you're going to get a little bit more leniency and you're going to get a little bit more cooperation from the IRS if you file. And if you don't have the money to pay your taxes, it doesn't mean you shouldn't file. So things like that, that are more prominent and should be addressed. And, but yeah, both those ways work. Usually, and I know it's old cliche, Connie, the cream will normally find its way to the top.
That's right.
Stay with it, hang with it, have a good attitude, work every day to improve yourself, whether you're working out, your nutrition, whatever it may be. And if you're doing those things, you're doing just about as much as you can do. Hard work conquers all.
Let me ask you this. I know that there's been a lot of questions that you've gotten over the years about, who's the best guy to never make it and things like that.
Yeah.
But do you ever think back and you take a look at not necessarily a guy who just fumbled and whatever, but maybe where the system failed him? It really was just a circumstance of timing where you really believed in him and other people really believed in him, but for whatever reason, the system failed him. Does a name like that exist in your mind?
It might, if I go back and really peel the onion back and do a little bit more forensic study. There's always a reason that somebody doesn't make it. And some of those reasons are easy to identify and to solve, actually. If you identify the problem, then you go solve it.
Right.
I can't think of a name. I'm sure the fans listening to the show will have somebody on their mind.
Well, here's the thing about fans, and I speak as a fan. I know who I think, oh man, that guy could have been a star, but I don't know the circumstance enough behind the scenes to know why that didn't happen. And sometimes, okay, yes, it is on the talent, but sometimes I do think, hey man, the system's just broken and it failed that guy. And I think we saw that when, for instance, Hunter took over. One of the first things he did is he went out and hired back a lot of the folks who had been sent away. And there's been a lot of debate about, should he have hired this guy or that guy or what have you, but he certainly believed in them, but maybe somebody else didn't. Right. And that sounds like it was almost well, are you a this guy or are you a that guy? And so when someone thinks you're a loyalist to this talent or that talent, to go back in a different circumstance, you could probably argue that Dr. Death, maybe a lot of people thought, well, that's JR's boy.
Oh,
so he came in with a bullseye on him. That's not really his fault. He didn't do anything wrong, right?
No, nothing. And nobody confronted him about it either. That's the irony.
Right.
Bunch of chicken shit cowards that thought they could help him, but they're afraid to approach him. He's a sweetheart. He was a sweetheart of a guy. I was hoping to get that one run out of him. I wanted Dr. Death versus Stone Cold somewhere down the road. And getting Doc ready would have been a fresh match. It could have been really good, I think. But, it just didn't work out that way. That stupid fucking brawl for it all killed a lot of pushes and confidence and things like that. So, yeah, this had a lot of spinoffs, Connie. Had a lot of spinoffs of problematic issues. So, the Doc would have been.
I know it wasn't on your watch.
I was hoping so.
I know it wasn't on your. I know it wasn't on your watch. I want to give a shout out before we wrap things up. I know we've gone long today, but this is such a great topic. Deep South Wrestling, almost like the forgotten developmental territory, cranked out quite a bit of talent. The Miz, Xavier Woods, Matt Cardona, even Kenny Omega went through there. Obviously, it's high fives all around for OVW because that was your baby. But boy, Deep South did their thing too. And we're going to be doing our thing next week. When we talk about In Your House Degeneration X from 25 years ago. We're going to wrap up the Hart Foundation. We're going to be talking about Brett Screwed Brett, the push of Ken Shamrock, Steve Austin and The Rock beginning their journey together. Jeff Jarrett's and sit downs with you. Sergeant Slaughter is back in the ring against Triple H, taking on Mark Marrow. And, well, I guess we'll see Mark Marrow actually taking on Butterbean. How about that? All right. Take a look at this chart right here. If you're watching with me over online on YouTube, you'll see this chart because it's kind of crazy when you think about it. This is showing, according to the Zillow Home Value Index, that your home value is going up in value year over year over year. And what that means to you is you're sitting on untapped equity. Now, as a heads up, I want to give you a little pop quiz here. Are you feeling a little stress? You feeling a little pressure financially? Well, the solution has been hiding from you in your house. It's not in your junk drawer. It's not in your attic. It's not in your basement. It's in the equity in your house. And maybe you got one of those really low COVID rates and you're worried about giving it up. But here's something to think about. If you feel stuck carrying credit card debt, and most Americans are doing that right now, because I don't know if you've seen this, but America's in more credit card debt than ever before. And a big part of that is because people are saying, oh, I don't want to lose my great rate on my mortgage. Hey, buddy, I hear you. But did you ever think about the fact that all of the savings you have because of that great rate is being eaten up because you've maxed out your credit cards at a really crazy high interest rate? What is your interest rate on that credit card? 20%, 30%, whatever it is, you know, you can do better. And you can even use that equity in your house to make some improvements around the house. I want to go ahead and mention my buddy Andrew. He's in Tennessee and he wanted to pay off some debt. He also needed a new roof on his house. He needed some new floors in his house. But rather than go out and take out more debt, he went to savewithconrad.com. We showed him how to use the equity he's already built up in his house. We did a debt consolidation and a cash out refinance. So he's consolidating his bills to get a lower monthly payment. But at the same time, we're also giving him the cash he needs to get a new roof and to get some new floors. Well, at savewithconrad.com, we hooked all that up, and he's going to save more than $400 a month. I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute. He got a new roof and new floors, and his payment went down? Yeah. It sounds too good to be true, but we can do it for you too right now at savewithconrad.com. Just let my team run the numbers for you. If we can't save you some cash, we won't waste your time. I want to mention too, it's no cost, it's no obligation, and you don't need perfect credit. I don't want you to feel shamed if you've had, a little late payment here or there. Man, who cares? That's part of life. And at savewithconrad.com, we don't say no. We say not yet, but here's how. Because we want to be your mortgage advisor for life. And when I say for life, I mean it. If you really are concerned about getting rid of that really great low COVID interest rate, I want to put my money where my mouth is. That's why we created the year 3 guarantee. You see, all the experts seem to agree that interest rates are going to improve over the next few years, and you don't want to miss out on that. But it doesn't make sense to say, well, I'll just keep paying more for now. No, don't do that. Start saving money today, but don't waste money later. Because with our guarantee, you won't have to pay those lender fees. Yeah, we'll throw you another refinance without all those new lender fees. So you're going to get to save money today with a much cheaper monthly payment. And by the way, did I mention a little summer vacation from house payments? Yeah, you won't make another payment until September. So your July and your August payment, you just keep that. But we'll get rid of all your credit card debt. We'll get you the cash you need to turn your house into your dream home with no money out of pocket. And come September, you're going to have a cheaper monthly payment. Andrew saved $400 a month doing this, and you can do it too right now. But you get the peace of mind with our year 3 guarantee of knowing that if rates improve over the next 3 years, hey man, just call us back. We'll do it again and get you an even better deal without paying another set of closing costs. How can you beat that? You've got nothing to lose at savewithconrad.com, just a whole bunch of unnecessarily high interest debt. Let's get rid of it together right now at savewithconrad.com. NMLS number 2129, equal housing lender, savewithconrad.com. We'll see you next week right here talking all things In Your House Degeneration X from 1997, my favorite year. Here we go on Grillin' JR with the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus, ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. adfreeshows.com.